a rather bizarre claim. Why are you singling out Bangalore for potholes? There are potholes even in Delhi and in Mumbai. He said specifically there are potholes even outside Prime Minister Modi's house, and he had visited the same. Now, we sent our reporter out there to that area of central Delhi to do a fact check to see if there was any merit in what the Karnataka Deputy Chief Minister was saying, whether there were actually any potholes outside 7 LKM, which is the Prime Minister's residence, or is there not? Now, what we found wouldn't be very surprising, because you would imagine such a high-profile VVIP zone to have the best of paved roads. But the bigger question is this: why is the Karnataka nothing inherently wrong with a city not having first-class, first-world infrastructure? Is there too much to ask that Bangalore residents who pay high taxes, by the way, the highest taxes in the state of Karnataka are paid by Bangalore, and the second highest taxes anywhere in the country are paid by the state of Karnataka, and yet the infrastructure that Bangaloreans get is almost third world. So should the Karnataka government not take the basic civic concerns of its citizens more seriously?
ನಾನು ಡೆಲ್ಲಿಗೆ ಹೋಗಿದ್ದೆ. ಡೆಲ್ಲಿ ಎಲ್ಲ ಒಂದು ರೌಂಡ್ ನೋಡಿದೆ. ಇದೆಲ್ಲ ಆದಮೇಲೆ ನೀವೆಲ್ಲ ನಿಮ್ಮ ರಿಪೋರ್ಟ್ ಹೇಳ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಅಲ್ಲೆಷ್ಟು ಗುಡ್ಡಿಗಳಿದೆ, ಪ್ರೈಮ್ ಮಿನಿಸ್ಟರ್ ಮನೆ ರೋಡಲ್ಲಿ ಎಷ್ಟಿದೆ ಅನ್ನೋದು ಕೂಡ ತಾವೆಲ್ಲ ನೋಡಬೇಕಾಗ್ತದೆ. ಒಂದು yes, you can see everywhere it is potholes are there. Not only everywhere potholes.
So DK Shivkumar is not just the Deputy Chief Minister of the state, he also happens to be the Guardian Minister for Bengaluru. He's of course clearly trying to deflect the blame by saying, I travelled up to Modi's house and there were potholes outside there as well. But the Karnataka Congress has been echoing that sentiment as well, whether it's on social media or otherwise. The state Congress unit has compared roads in BJP-ruled states, pointing out that Bihar and Uttar Pradesh, where the NDA is in power, there pothole accidents are much more than has been reported from Karnataka. Now, the claim is that the BJP Smart City program is a sham. It was exposed because it wasn't just Bengaluru where potholes were seen on roads, but also highlighted a 1.3-kilometer stretch of the outer ring road that was repaired, and the BJP was making a mountain of a molehill. Congress also pointed to Chief Minister's deadline of October 31, which is going to be end of next month, to fill all potholes in the city. But I want to play out an excerpt of what our reporter Arun did. He took that same path, that same road, from Karnataka Bhavan in central Delhi to right outside the Prime Minister's residence. It's the same path that DK Shivkumar says has potholes. This is what our reporter found out, the actual scenario on the ground.
So today we decided, let's give it a reality check whether potholes are there around the Prime Minister's house in the national capital or not. We'll show you in this report. So we are starting this car through from Karnataka Bhavan itself, and you can see with your eyes what is the condition of this road. Remember, this is the Lutyens Delhi of the national capital, a very prime location, and DK Shivkumar, the Deputy Chief Minister of Karnataka, has raised questions on these roads. So the next turn that we are going to take is to the 7 LKM Marg, and 7 LKM Marg is the residence of the Prime Minister, and here you can see on your screen, I don't really see any pothole as of now on this Kautilya Marg, and this is now we have entered in the 7 LKM. You can see we are flying on 7 LKM right now. On the left side is the residence of Prime Minister Modi. You can in fact see the security also there on this road outside Prime Minister Modi's residence. This is a complete road which is in fact passing through the Prime Minister Modi's residence. This is 7 LKM that you see on your screen, and DK Shivkumar, the Deputy Chief Minister of Karnataka, has raised questions on this road. So we haven't found a pothole in this road. I mean, it's been like 50 meters we've traveled, but we haven't found even a single pothole which he was mentioning about now.
All right, I want to go straight across for a political face-off. Ashok Gowda of the Karnataka BJP is joining us. Satabi Shivanna is spokesperson of the Congress in Karnataka. Mr. Shivanna, Mr. DK Shivkumar says, there are potholes everywhere. Even in Delhi, there are potholes. Outside Modi's house, there are potholes. We just played out what our reporter found out. There are no potholes outside Lutyens Delhi, outside the Prime Minister's residence. I mean, there may be potholes in other parts of the city, but that's no excuse to say that Bangalore does not have potholes or the government can't take care of those potholes. I mean, by the BBMP's own admission, the BBMP across the greater Bengaluru region has identified 14,795 potholes as of September 2025, of which 7,000 plus have been fixed. Another 4 or 5,000 still yet to be fixed. And the Deputy Chief Minister says, why are you guys singling out Bangalore? There are potholes in other cities too.
There are potholes in other cities, and the Honorable Deputy Chief Minister's sentiment is that Karnataka, merely because the Congress, the principal opposition, is in power here, we are being targeted. That apart, you are a senior journalist, there are potholes everywhere. Let me start by saying this. Potholes is not about Congress versus BJP. They are about citizens, their safety and their dignity on roads. And Zaka, I have been following you for years. You have covered the aspect of potholes, waterlogging, traffic in Bangalore very comprehensively with objective journalism. And you would know better than anyone that this is not about one minister or one monsoon. It is a systemic problem that requires a systemic solution. Therefore, the Congress is building a safer, smoother, future-ready roads for Bengaluru. We have started a Congress Cares initiative because we are above petty politics. While the opposition is singling us out or busy scoring points, we are focusing on fusing technology with accountability. And as you rightly pointed out, where is the money being spent? I was on your show last week and I said, I will give you progress. There is 300, I'm just going to give you some statistics. 390 kilometers of main roads and sub-main roads have been refurbished. First round of white topping has been completed on 97 prominent roads. 200 plus roads in the city have been included in stone matrix asphalting. 1.3 kilometer stretch of potholes filled on the ORR immediately after you reported Black Buck. 299 potholes that were repaired over the last weekend alone. And I must give credit to CNN. You carried out a postcard campaign wherein one of your associate editor, Rohini Swami, along with certain children, gave about 500 postcards directly sent to the Deputy Chief Minister. And she has reported today that the Honorable Deputy Chief Minister has acted. We have corresponded. We have heard the people. And I'm sure you can tell, after covering Bangalore for so many years, that we have a better response and reaction mechanism than ever before.
So Mr. Gowda, the point that the Congress is making is that the area of potholes, the BBMP is saying that as far as 24-25, the financial year 24-25 is concerned, 1.78 lakh square meters of pothole, that's a 63% increase in the amount of area of potholes that's been repaired. That has happened in the year 24-25. They've given large-scale funding. 694 crores have been given for resurfacing of 390 kilometers of roads. It's been approved as a 2-year action plan. The budget for 24-25 was 300 crores, and for 25-26, 395 crores. That's a big jump, 94 crore jump, almost a fourth jump between 24-25 and 25-26. They're saying, what more can the government do? What more do you expect the government to do? Much of these are legacy issues from your time in power.
See, apparently, Congress blamed BJP saying that we have made it as a pothole city. Now, I don't know where the statistics came from, around 14,000 and odd or very close to around 15,000 potholes. It is as of record, as I have, it is 28,000 potholes in Bangalore. And yes, as your correspondent Rohini ji reported with a postcard and Deputy CM has corrected it, that's what Shivana Satabist claims. He's a lawyer. I'm a qualified architect and a planner. I know how to repair the potholes. Point is very simple, Zaka. Now, how to repair the potholes? There is a system to repair the potholes. What is the BBMP doing? BBMP is taking the tar with the jelly and going and filling the potholes, and they are saying that we have filled the potholes. Believe me or not, whenever the next train comes in the 3-4 days or 2-3 weeks time, and same pothole will be more bigger than what it is. There is a system to do that. Why can't DK Shivakumar not understand that just to do this system, there is something called geosynthetic material which has to be used to fill the potholes. Where is the geosynthetic material? Just by going and dumping the fill, and it will not clear the potholes. We have been saying this 2.5 years since the Congress government has come to power. Almost 29th month we are in. And when the 29th month, they are saying that BJP did it, or Delhi has, or Mumbai has, or some other state has where the NDA is in rule.
No,
Please
so
stop doing this kind of politics.
they are
No,
saying that on average 7 to 12 crore rupees has been spent on pothole filling programs on a monthly basis. It's a 63% increase year on year, and that in specific zones like Rajrajeshwari Nagar, for example, over 2,443 potholes were mapped, and 2,400 of them have been apparently filled with this geosynthetic material that you're talking about. That's the claim by the BBMP.
see, I have never seen, believe me or not, I have never seen, even in front of Vidhan Sauda, there is a pothole, which I myself stood there because I had parked my car and I was waiting for another friend of mine. Believe me or not, they just came, they dumped it, and they filled it, and they rolled it. That's it. No geosynthetic material was used. If geosynthetic material was used in filling the potholes in the earlier years, definitely this pothole increase could not have been 63%. Probably it could have been only 1 year, 2 year, maximum 10%.
So Shatvesh,
meaning to say that
in the
corruption
same
even in potholes.
in the same app that you have installed, that the BBMP has installed, in the 10-day period between September 1 and September 10th, the BBMP app received 1,376 pothole complaints, and that of those 1,376, 964 were pending. This is as of a report of 15th of September 2025, that a majority, a large majority of those complaints that have come in the BBMP installed app are still unattended to. Then what is the citizens' grievance redressal mechanism?
No, is it perfect? No. But have we built a faster, transparent, accountable reaction system compared to any other government and then ever before? Undoubtedly, yes. We are on the ground. We are trying to do our best. See, potholes has been a crisis. It is going to be a crisis. And I welcome the suggestion of Sri Ashok Gowda. He must sit with us, collaborate. We will take him to BBMP. We are trying to do the best we can. We have included certain scientific methods. The subject matter expertise like Ashok Gowda I don't have. But we are using cold mix. We are using EcoFix. And where is the money going? I just want to point out the Chickpet subdivision team has fixed potholes on Siddhaya Road. Cold mixer, as you pointed out, has been filled for potholes in Padmanabhanagar. EcoFix pothole works at Amrut Nagar near the police station. Works on ORR Service Road. Resurfacing on Kidwai Hosu Road. Pothole works on Miller Road, BTM Layout, Madiwala, Kormangla,
But
Ward 37,
Shatvesh,
Peenya,
the annual losses to
we are doing
businesses, the annual losses to businesses because of rain-related havoc, rain-related disruption and potholes is 20,000 crores. 20,000 crores is a disruption to ordinary businesses, small shops, from small shops to big IT companies.
Yes, I can't deny that, right? And the potholes have created a huge crisis for the people. Their vehicles are being damaged. People are suffering. Students are suffering. But the Congress government is doing its best with the people in coordination with the fourth pillar of democracy, that is the media, in coordination with BBMP engineers. We are trying to sort this out. I'm not going to lose my dignity and play this blame game of BJP, Congress, JDS, etc. We are in a bad crisis. We have to coordinate together. This civic apathy must end.
So let me ask Mr. Gowda, there was a lot of brouhaha last week when Black Buck, an IT logistics company, said that they are moving their headquarters from the ORR, the IT corridor, the Outer Ring Road. Now the claim is that 694 crores has already been spent and 390 kilometers of roads has already been retarred and repaved as per the BBMP. Now, what more do you expect? In the IT corridor, for example, the highest allocation out of the total budget of the BBMP, which is 19,000 crores, the highest allocation was in the IT corridor in the Mahadevpura area. Now, they are saying that, a government can only respond to a problem. Problems will come. Rain, no government can control rain, and the kind of damage it leaves behind, again, no government can control. What it can control is how it responds to it, and they're saying they're responding as best as they can.
See, I will tell you, Zaka. See, if the government was very serious about this potholes, they should think about it in the budget allocation from the state budget or as well as in BBMP. BBMP has a very small budget. they cannot do the potholes only with the BBMP funds. Now, if the state budget happens in the month of March first week, a second week, and in Bengaluru, what we have seen is summer starts in the month of February and the rains will start by the end of April or May. So, meaning to say that the pothole filling or the road doing should be done in the month of February, March, and April. And if the government is serious about it, Sidramaya is having the finance portfolio. You should think about this. Point number one. Point number two, the solution is it's not about the road alone or the pothole alone. If you fix the drainage properly, or when the rain falls on the road, it should go to the drain. And that should be the system. Because the engineers in BBMP have become jugaad engineers. They do not update themselves. They are all outdated. And if the government is serious, they should train them on to the new age technology, which is happening in the IRC. And IRC is also updated. And IRC, nobody knows in the BBMP except for 3 or 4 engineers. And this is point number 2. Point number 3, the new age systems are there. Even when there is a tree, but a very big tree, and just because the raindrops fall on the asphalt, you can always protect the asphalted area with the new age technological systems like geosynthetical material and other things. And now let me come to the white topping. White topping is definitely very expensive and definitely not a right solution for a city like Bengaluru. Mumbai, yes, agreed. But I'm not denying that white top is not at all a solution, but it is one of the solutions only. What is happening is in white top, come to the Church Street or come to the Museum Road or anywhere, again the road is stuck. We are not following the systems just like New York or any other cities, which has a complete underground system. So meaning to say, Bangalore needs a different technology and different system, updated engineers. So DK Shivkumar and Sidramaya, if they're serious about Bengaluru, if they're serious about the investments in Bengaluru, they should work on this.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. Ashok Gowda and Chadvi Shivarna, thank you very much for joining us. Hopefully this will be a wake-up call for the authorities, whether it's the city government, the state government. Ultimately, the Guardian Minister has to take responsibility and ensure that as minimal as possible people are inconvenienced, because the basic that people can ask for is basic civic redressal, whether it's in the form of redressal for potholes or any other grievances that they might have. I want to move on to another story, and this is of course having ramifications here in India as well. US President Donald Trump, he has now linked autism to childhood vaccine and the use of a popular pain medication, Tylenol, which is basically a paracetamol. He says when expectant mothers take Tylenol or paracetamol, it leads to autism or possible autism in the kids. Now, he announced that the US Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, will notify doctors to stop prescribing paracetamol or Tylenol to pregnant mothers. Trump insists that pregnant women should tough it out and that they should avoid Tylenol. The advice from Trump, who acknowledged he's not a doctor, goes against that of what medical science has been citing. In fact, doctors, gynecologists particularly, have been citing data from numerous studies showing that the active ingredient in Tylenol, acetaminophen, plays a safe role in the well-being of pregnant women. Of course, any ingredient, any medicine, any tablet, if it is taken in a huge quantity, does have some kind of a negative effect, some kind of a downside. But if it's taken as per prescription given to you by a practicing doctor, then there is absolutely nothing to suggest that Tylenol or paracetamol is dangerous to pregnant women, or least of all to suggest that there is any kind of linkage between paracetamol and autism in children.
Speaking during Charlie Kirk's memorial in Arizona on Sunday, President Trump's speech took a detour, previewing an announcement about autism.
I think we found an answer to autism. How about that?
Today's announcement is expected to link the development of autism in children with use of pain reliever Tylenol during pregnancy. Tylenol, which is the brand name of the generic pain reliever acetaminophen, is widely used in the U.S., including during pregnancy. Speaking aboard Air Force One Sunday, Trump said he wants to see action.
We want things to take effect immediately.
According to a U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention report published in April, the incidence of autism is on the rise, which one expert says is primarily due to a broadening of the definition and push for better screening in children. About 1 in every 31 children was diagnosed with autism by age 8 in 2022, up from 1 in 36 in 2020. Tylenol maker Kenvue said earlier this month it had engaged in a scientific exchange on the issue with U.S. Department of Health and Human Services officials. In a statement, the company says acetaminophen is the safest pain reliever option for pregnant women as needed throughout their entire pregnancy. Without it, women face dangerous choices, suffer through conditions like fever that are potentially harmful to both mom and baby, or use riskier alternatives.
There is, unfortunately, no new studies, no new evidence that the administration offered today. We know from the studies that have already been conducted, again, over the past decade around the world, looking at millions of children, that there is no causal relationship between taking Tylenol, Paracetamol, acetaminophen in pregnancy and later on having an increased risk of your baby developing autism. There just isn't evidence for a causal relationship at this time, Linda. There are risks associated with leaving a fever untreated, especially during the first trimester. So when you run a fever as a pregnant woman and you do not treat it, your risk of having a miscarriage, of your baby developing neural tube defects, heart defects, goes up, Linda. So this notion that doing nothing is better than taking a small dose of Tylenol is simply not true, because the risks of leaving fevers untreated in pregnancy are real.
I want to go across to a very special guest. Dr. Soumya Swaminathan is former DG of the Indian Council for Medical Research and former chief scientist of the WHO. Donald Trump, ma'am, says that paracetamol or Tylenol, according to him, is directly linked to autism in kids and that pregnant mothers should avoid this. Is there a valid scientific connection between the two, or is it a far-fetched connection to make?
So I think that the US administration and the health secretary in particular has been focusing a lot on autism. That seems to be one of their big concerns for the health of the American public. And so they have been talking about the various risk factors for autism and trying to reduce those, which is a good aim. Certainly it's a disease that needs much more research and evidence. As far as paracetamol is concerned, however, looking at the evidence that's currently available in the literature, there are many studies, most of them are observational studies. Some of the studies show an association between paracetamol use in pregnancy and some neurodevelopmental changes, including autism spectrum disorder, an increase. However, these are associations, not causation. And some studies that have tried to control for factors like, there are genetic factors. There are obviously environmental factors within the household, other things. So there are studies that have looked at siblings. In one pregnancy, the mother would have used paracetamol, in another pregnancy, not. And when those studies have actually showed less of an association between paracetamol use and autism spectrum disorder. So I think what the FDA has done now with its recent the guidance that they've just put out is saying, let's take a precautionary principle. There could be an association. There could be links between paracetamol and autism. So let's limit its use in pregnancy. Let's use it only where necessary. So they've alerted physicians. And I think that the principle there is okay, because we know that during pregnancy, one should limit drug use, any drugs. There should not be unnecessary use of any medication unless the doctor has prescribed it and there's a clear indication. We also know that paracetamol is the safest drug so far that we have for use during pregnancy for fever or pain. So we need to balance that. So where there is a need, a woman is suffering from high fever or severe pain and she needs relief, paracetamol is the safest option to go with. At the same time, one should avoid the overuse of any drug, including paracetamol. We should not just keep taking it for reasons which are not well, where there's no good indication.
So, many physicians, many doctors, including even, likes of obstetricians and gynecologists are saying that there is no scientific backing, there's no medical science backing to the use of paracetamol and, the linkages to autism, just like you said. It's not a causation. Many in the US are also of this opinion that this is just another sweeping statement made by President Trump. So how do you see that?
Right. Exactly. I think for the president to make an announcement like this, it should be based on much stronger evidence and research, and there should be a very clear guidance also that comes out. So such a statement, could actually just induce a lot of fear or panic amongst the people, which is completely unwarranted. Most of the medical bodies have spoken up and said that there is no clear evidence of the link, causal link between paracetamol and autism. So there's really no need to panic. And like I said before, for every medicine or vaccine, it's always a question of benefit versus risk. That's how physicians make a call. That's how regulatory bodies license drugs. So I think at the current moment, with the given state of evidence, there's no reason why we have to immediately stop using paracetamol. It's the only drug we can use during pregnancy for fever or pain. So I think we also have to look at the evidence and, the experts, the scientists and the doctors bodies, the expert bodies have all said that there is no reason to stop the use of paracetamol.
So some are also seeing, Dr. Soumya Swaminathan, some are also viewing this as India being targeted once again by the Trump administration, because India happens to be a global leader in the production of paracetamol. A lot of drug generic APIs are produced here in India, paracetamol being one of the leading ones there. What is your view on that? Is there more to it than meets the eye? Is this not just a medical guidance? Is this more also a sort of ongoing political, if not geopolitical guidance, motivated by geopolitical factors?
No, I don't think so. I don't think it's got any link with that. I think it's, like I said, it's their health secretary is sort of obsessed with autism and finding out the reason and trying to make policies which would reduce the burden. But the problem is that the aim is fine, but the way in which it has to be done has to be very different. It has to be scientific. You have to take experts on board. You've got to review the evidence and then only make, especially for a drug like paracetamol, which is so commonly used. So again, for the president, to make an announcement like that is very surprising, because it's not something that normally you would expect a head of state to talk about, unless there was something like during COVID, when you had every head of state talking about health, COVID, the COVID vaccines. You needed that political leadership. But this particular issue, particularly in the state of no conclusive evidence, I don't know why the president has chosen to target paracetamol during pregnancy. I would just say that drugs need to be used for particular indications. People should not self-medicate. People should not unnecessarily take medicine at a different dose of a longer duration than prescribed by the doctor. That's a good principle to follow. But in this particular situation of paracetamol and autism, I don't think that we have the evidence to really claim that one causes the other.
Dr. Soumya Swaminathan, former chief scientist with the World Health Organization, thank you very much for joining us with your thoughts and perspective. Thank you. So amid the trade and tariff negotiations between India and the United States came this sudden bombshell, this shocker from the Trump administration in the form of the H-1B announcement, where every new applicant or application for H-1B will have to be accompanied with a $100,000 fee. So some would say this seems like 3 strikes against India. In baseball, 3 strikes means you go home. But all of this is also coming amidst what is seemingly a bit of a thaw between the leadership. In fact, there was a phone call last week. President Donald Trump spoke to Prime Minister Modi, wished him on his birthday in a bit to try and smoothen things over. And then that was followed up with a meeting yesterday at the United Nations General Assembly in New York, where External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar met with his US counterpart, Marco Rubio. Both leaders discussed strengthening their strategic cooperation, whether it's in trade, defense, energy, pharmaceuticals, and critical minerals. And the Commerce Minister, Piyush Goyal, and his team are in the US right now for the next round of the trade talks. Just last week, Brendan Lynch, who is the Assistant US Trade Representative, was in Delhi. So those negotiations on the one hand seem to be going okay, but there are these actions that have been taken by the Trump administration, whether it's the tariffs, then the removing the waiver on the Chabahar port in Iran, which India is operating for the next 10 years, and then of course the latest one, which many are saying is a bit of a death knell for Indian techies, which is the H-1B visa announcement to be accompanied by a $100,000 application fee for all new applicants. So how do we read this? And how does India play this? Because it seems like a bit of a blow hot and blow cold when it comes to the relationship between Washington and Delhi. How does India rise up to these challenges, both in the near term and in the longer term? I want to go across to Mr. Ashley J. Tellis. He's a senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. He's the Tata Chair at Carnegie. Thank you very much, Mr. Tellis, for speaking with us here on CNN News 18. So I said three strikes when I described what's been happening between India and the United States. The trade and tariffs one was the first strike, where India was the only country in the world, along with Brazil, to be tariffed at 50%. India is the only country to be tariffed for import of Russian oil. Then you had this sanctions waiver for the Chabahar port, which Trump incidentally had given in his first term. That's been waived off last week. And then on Friday, we had this big, almost some would say body blow to Indian techies in the form of the H-1B announcement. How does India read this? How does India navigate these curveballs that the Trump administration is throwing at it?
So I would caution against seeing this as some kind of a cumulative strategy aimed only at India. I think each of the three elements that you flagged have their own logic, though obviously India is clearly affected by the accumulation of them. I think the H-1B visa, for example, that's been a concern that this administration came into office with this time around. It was almost inevitable that there was going to be some pushback on the H-1B program. The issues relating to Iran are also connected to the changes in US policy towards Iran, most recently the attacks that took place, and the Trump administration's desire to essentially short-circuit any Iranian ambitions towards a nuclear weapon. And even the trade problems that we've had with India are linked to the trade problems we seem to be having with every country around the world. So India is uniquely affected by this trifecta, but it's not designed to be the sole target of US policies.
But the cumulative factor, as you said, one after another, one adding up after another, that's left a bit of a, not just a bitter taste in the mouth here in India, but policymakers is really sort of confounded. How does one deal with this? Because it seems like, you know, on the face of it, India and the US are strategic partners. There's a strategic logic to it. It's been there for the last 25 years. But in the matter of, you know, 2 or 3 months now, the very logic of that strategic partnership has been upended. So how does India respond to it?
Well, I think India ought to respond in exactly the way that it's doing, which is you separate each of these elements and you address the concerns embodied in each element seriously. And I think India has already begun to do that. But it's the last point that you make that I think needs to be, sort of taken more seriously, which is that the strategic foundations of the relationship have indeed been upended. Because those strategic foundations were erected on the assumption that China would be a persistent strategic competitor to the United States. And in that context, India, of course, had outsized importance. But for the second Trump administration, China is seen entirely as an economic rival rather than as a geopolitical competitor. And all countries in the world are seen as economic rivals of the United States. So in that context, the kind of primacy that India enjoyed in US foreign policy making has certainly diminished considerably. And I think that is the transformative fact that we need to wrap our hands around.
So let me just deal with that China question, because, you know, again, the way New Delhi sees it, the actions that have been taken by the Trump administration in the last few weeks vis-a-vis China, you have this TikTok deal that prior to that, China got this exemption for 3 months. They decided to, not have the tariffs on China for 3 months. I think it was the only country that got such a large window. Second, you had this TikTok deal, which both the presidents spoke over the phone last weekend, and, that seems to have been negotiated. And now, even President Trump saying that he'll likely meet President Xi Jinping maybe as early as next month on the sidelines of the APEC summit in Korea. And the fear here in India is that the US-China trade deal might get cut. A deal might be done between Beijing and Washington before a deal between Delhi and Washington, and therefore India might be left out in the lurch.
So I think we have to take two elements quite seriously, right? That from President Trump's point of view, he is eager, in fact, some might say desperately eager, for a trade deal with China, which, if it were to happen, could have the potential of making all US-China problems go away, at least from the president's perspective. And I think that is a dangerous expectation, even for the United States. But it doesn't matter what I think on this count. I mean, what matters is what President Trump thinks. And he seems to believe that if we can get a negotiated settlement of the problems that bedevil the United States and China on trade, then China just ceases to become a strategic competitor. And if that is, in fact, the premise on which he's operating, then I think both the United States and in India are going to be in substantial trouble. The second issue, of course, has to do with sequencing. I know the president wants an agreement with China very quickly. I think the challenges with China are quite serious. I'm not sure that we will be able to reach that agreement prior to reaching the agreement with India. I think that's something we have to simply wait and watch for.
Okay, let me just press you on that a bit. So if you're saying that in Trump's worldview, and frankly, he's the only person who matters because he can decide on a whim what policy is. If in Trump's worldview, the only thing that is sort of the point of contention between the US and China is on trade, and he doesn't view China as a strategic competitor, what happens to US allies like Japan and South Korea and Philippines? And then there's this whole Taiwan question. So is he then basically saying to Xi Jinping, I don't care what you do there, it's your backyard, you can do what you want?
Well, that is certainly the implication that all American allies fear, most of all. So he sees China as a trade competitor. He, of course, sees China as a broader economic competitor, a competitor in innovation, and so on and so forth. But I do not get the impression that in this second term, he sees China as a geopolitical competitor, and that he sees China's policies as undermining US primacy, for example, in the Indo-Pacific, or in the US status as a global hegemon. I just don't see that as being visible enough in his second term. Now, to be fair, his administration seems to have a somewhat different view. His administration understands that China is both an economic competitor and a strategic competitor. But to the degree that the president does not share that conviction, it certainly complicates US relations with its friends and allies, as the Japanese have, sort of understood and learned firsthand in the last few months, as the Koreans have learned firsthand in the last few months, and as India has learned in the last few months. So this is a problem that is likely to persist for some time to come.
So if I were to look at it another way, and some people have written about this, I think there's been some work around this as well, that in Trump's head, the world is like it was between 1918 and 1939, between the two world wars, where you had different countries and different spheres of influence. So you had the Anglo-Saxon sphere of influence, you had the Russian sphere of influence, you had America, which was unchallenged on either side, on either ocean, as it were. And now, of course, he's trying to replicate that to the 21st century. So China has its own sphere of influence, Russia has its own sphere of influence, America does, and he doesn't really care about the rest of the world.
I think there is a huge element of truth to that his focus appears to be on the United States in its own hemisphere. And to the degree that America has inherited alliances and partnerships, he really sees this as a residual of a different world that he is not quite enthusiastic about. Now, having said all that, there are the realities of path dependence, right? The United States simply cannot walk away from the obligations that it has inherited, even if the president at the moment is not enthusiastic about them. But what it does risk is a fraying of those traditional relationships. And over the long term, that fraying could be very costly for America's own interests. once we come around to recognizing them as we did for many decades in the post-war era. So I think what our partners have to do is to really think of their relationships with the United States beyond President Trump. Because if you don't keep that perspective in mind, then you are really going to be buffeted by a lot of surprises, some very unpleasant, in the next 3.5 years.
Well, I was just going to say, what do you do about the next 3.5 years? So I want to bring it back to where I started, and that is the three challenges that have been placed before India. And if you were to put, yourself in the shoes of the Prime Minister of India or the Foreign Minister of India and how to navigate these three. One is the tariffs and trade issue, the 50% tariffs that have been imposed on India. How does India navigate that? Second, like I mentioned, the Chabahar port. Again, the reason why New Delhi is really flipped out about the Chabahar port sanctions being taken off is because, this was an understanding that Trump had in his first term. And nobody else is affected by this other than India, because it's India that operates Chabahar. It's India that wants Chabahar for its connectivity into Central Asia. And it is sort of India's response to Gwadar, which the Chinese and the Pakistanis are building. And thirdly, on this H-1B business, how does India navigate these three, issues that have come up in this relationship?
Well, I will address each of those three, but let me make a foundational point first, right? The second Trump term is radically different from the first Trump term. Mm-hmm. And the fact that Trump took certain positions in the first term do not bind him for the second term. The clearest case in point is the reality of great power competition. It was Trump who declared the onset of great power competition in his first term. And in the second term, he operates as if he has no memory of what he did in the first. So we need to get that, sort of very clear that this is a different administration from the first term, and you have to take it at face value. On each of the specifics, I fear that the issues relating to Russian oil are going to be the most complicated. I fear that the issues relating to Chabahar are going to be equally complicated. And I don't think there is going to be substantial relief for India on either of those counts. So India has to simply recognize that it is in its own self-interest, if it wants to preserve the relationship with President Trump and with the United States over the next 3 years, to diminish the offtake of oil and to live with the fact that, the relationship on Chabahar is going to have to be one of distance, at least until the US changes its mind. I'm much more optimistic on trade, because I think we will be able to reach an agreement with respect to tariff reductions and a satisfactory trade agreement in the next few months.
And on H-1B?
The H-1B challenge, I think, will sort of take care of itself, but not in a way that India may like, which is I see increasingly American companies not giving up on high talents coming from India, but essentially attempting to use those talents in situ. Outsourcing the work to India so that talented Indians can work on these problems at home rather than having to come on an H-1B visa to the United States. Now, there will be still a certain proportion of Indians who will come on H-1B visas because it's simply economical for US companies to bring them here, but certainly not in the numbers that they have in the past. Most of that work will continue to be done for US companies, but from India and within India.
All right, Mr. Ashley Tellis, thank you very much for joining us with your thoughts and perspective on these pressing issues around the India-US relationship. Thank you very much indeed for your time and your perspective.
A pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
Preeti, if you are still with us, we do understand how emotional this entire aspect is and this entire final journey is because of the connection that Zubeen had with everybody in the state of Assam and many in the country. What would you tell our viewers, considering we are putting across these very emotional scenes? Looking at his wife, nearly inconsolable, is heart-wrenching.
See, you have mentioned about how he went for the festival, Northeast Festival, and where we never knew that Zubeen Garg will never come back alive after going to that festival. He, in fact, was not willing to go, as far as the reports are concerned now, because he was not very well. He said he did not want to go, but there were financial some agreements also made for which he had to go. But he never came back alive. And very strangely, his next movie that was coming up in the next month, Roy Roy Binale. The Roy Roy Binale, as we have got the information about, the climax scene was very much same as this scene. He would have gone to the sea, and someone of his friends would go there to rescue him. Very strange connections. We have very strange connections are now being seen. And he had a song, Akashe Gate Lobore Mon, Hagor Tolit Hubore Mon. So in this same song, Mayabini, there are these two lines, Akashe Gate Lobore Mon. I want to take the sky and the sea in my body, and I want to go into the sea forever. So he went to the sea forever. It was like his songs, even the last.
So Britain, Canada and Australia have now joined France in becoming some of the frontline Western countries that have come out and openly recognized a Palestinian state. So which means in the United Nations Security Council, 4 out of the 5 members, if you add Russia and China as well, 4 out of 5 members are officially now recognizing a Palestinian state. The only holdout is the United States, which is of course Israel's strongest ally and which will never flinch from its position of not wanting to upset Israel, and therefore it will not recognize a Palestinian state. But frankly, what does it really mean on the ground? Is it just symbolism? These announcements have been timed to the start of the United Nations General Assembly session, which happens every September. Is this simply symbolism, or will anything actually change on the ground?
To revive the hope of peace and a two-state solution, I state clearly, as Prime Minister of this great country, that the United Kingdom formally recognises the State of Palestine.
Britain, Canada and Australia confirmed that they now formally recognize Palestinian statehood. This now piles the pressure on Israel to ease the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. It also puts America's 3 major allies at odds with the Trump administration. The coordinated statements that came on the eve of the annual gathering of the United Nations General Assembly in New York, and later Portugal too confirmed that it's recognizing an independent Palestinian state. France was the first country off the block to announce its intention to recognize a Palestinian state. France made that announcement back in July. It is now pledged to vote for the recognition of an independent Palestinian state at the United Nations this week. France, Britain, Canada and Australia will be joining about 150 members of the United Nations who have already recognized an independent Palestinian state. But the concerted action on the eve of the UNGA by these 3 countries, Canada, Australia and Britain, across 3 different continents, will deepen the diplomatic isolation of Israel, and particularly of its Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. So far, though, the moves to recognize the Palestinian state have not curbed Israel's military campaign against Hamas in Gaza. That war is now going to close in almost 2 years on the 7th of October, and it has already killed more than 65,000 people. While recognition is a symbolic act and support for Palestinian self-determination, the prospect of a viable Palestinian state is in more ways than one most elusive now than it has ever been. A Palestinian state is unlikely to happen anytime soon, and one of the fundamental reasons for that is that much of the territory of a future Palestinian state is either occupied directly by Israel or access to that territory is controlled by Israel.
In the face of the growing horror in the Middle East, we are acting to keep alive the possibility of peace and a two-state solution. That means a safe and secure Israel alongside a viable Palestinian state. At the moment, we have neither.
The coordinated attempts by Britain, France, Australia and Canada has drawn quick condemnation from Israel and its embattled Prime Minister, Mr. Netanyahu.
יש לי מסר ברור לאותם מנהיגים שמכירים במדינה פלסטינית לאחר הטבח הנורא ב7 באוקטובר. אתם מעניקים פרס עצום לטרור. ויש לי מסר נוסף עבורכם. זה לא יהיה.
Israel has in the recent past attacked Hamas and its leadership inside Qatar, another Persian Gulf Arab state, a treaty ally of the United States, and in fact Qatar is one of the three mediators trying to arrive at a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. But after the attack that happened earlier this month, now that ceasefire looks more unlikely than ever. Far from scaling back after the attack on Qatar, Israeli troops have now expanded their combat operations. They are right now, even as we speak, advancing on Gaza's main urban centre, Gaza City. But in the UK, critics have faulted Britain's government, the government of Keir Starmer, for not doing more. It has stopped short of accusing Israel of genocide, despite the fact that a large number of Labour MPs have called the government on to do so. While on the one hand, Britain has suspended some weapons sales to Israel, it continues to supply parts for the F-35 fighter jets, which are used by the Israeli Air Force, on people in Gaza. The British government issued sanctions on two far-right ministers who were part of Netanyahu's cabinet, Itamar Ben-Gvir, the security minister, and Bezalel Smotrich, the finance minister. Downing Street has also signaled that it could arrest Netanyahu if he entered Britain. In fact, the British Prime Minister has said that UK will pledge to fulfill its legal obligations as set out by both domestic and international law. The International Criminal Court had issued an arrest warrant for Netanyahu last November. But the moves by France, Britain, Canada and Australia raise fundamental questions about what the recognition of a Palestinian state actually means and what it can actually accomplish on the ground. So the question is, what is a state and how is it recognized? The criteria for statehood was laid down in an international treaty called the Montevideo Convention back in 1933. Any state must include four elements: a permanent population, defined territorial boundaries, a government, and an ability to conduct international affairs. Recognition of a state is official acknowledgement that this would-be state would broadly meet these four conditions. The borders of a future Palestinian state are disputed with Israel, but they're broadly understood to be in Israeli-occupied territories, which is the West Bank and Gaza. Both these contested territories were seized by Israel in 1967 after the Israel-Arab War. In addition, there is also East Jerusalem, which Israel annexed, and it will never give up on Jerusalem because it's been the seat of power of the Jewish Empire for thousands of years. The Palestinian Authority is the government body that administers the part of West Bank. It represents Palestinians both inside and outside of this territory, while Hamas has been in control of Gaza since 2005. While there are limits to what the Palestinian Authority can and cannot do, given the Israeli occupation of the West Bank and Hamas's control of Gaza, foreign recognition of a Palestinian state would mean the establishment of direct diplomatic contacts between the state of Palestine and whichever country is recognizing it. Recognition would also send diplomatic and political messages. Ambassadors will have to be placed in the respective capitals. It would also acknowledge Palestinian right to self-determination and reject the positions and the actions of the Israeli government. Now, most countries in the United Nations, about 150 out of the 190 plus countries, have already recognized a Palestinian state. India recognized an independent Palestinian state in 1988. Britain and France recognizing an independent Palestine is important because they carry weight as permanent members of the UN Security Council. They can then have the power to veto any resolution that's brought forth in the Council. Britain and France would also be strengthening the stand taken by most other countries in the UN. It would send a huge political message to the Trump administration because 4 out of 5 permanent members, that includes China, Russia, Britain and France, will be recognizing a Palestinian state, which means the United States is the only permanent member of the UNSC which has veto power, which is still holding out on recognizing an independent Palestine. The state of Palestine currently has observer status at the United Nations. That will not change so long as the United States maintains its opposition to having an independent Palestine. So net-net, while this move by Canada, Britain, France, etc. is highly symbolic, it is unlikely to change anything on the ground.
Following some breaking news we've had in the last, 30 minutes, I would say. Disney says the comedian Jimmy Kimmel will return to ABC's late night lineup, and it will happen on Tuesday. Kimmel was suspended indefinitely last week following his comments about the murder of Charlie Kirk. Disney released a statement saying, in part, "We have spent the last days having thoughtful conversations with Jimmy, and after those conversations, we reached a decision to return the show on Tuesday." Sarah Fisher's with me now. So, Sarah, just give us a bit more context. I mean, what more do we know? How much pressure did Disney stars actually have, that were boycotting, have over this?
I think it did have a lot of pressure. We know that Jimmy Kimmel and Disney had been negotiating for the past few days. Jimmy Kimmel has not made any public comments since his show was suspended. But just this morning, over 400 very prominent actors, celebrities, and musicians signed a letter with the ACLU pressuring Disney over the issue. You also had a few celebrities over the past weekend say that they were canceling their Disney Plus subscriptions, including Cynthia Nixon and Howard Stern. And on top of that, you had a bunch of policymakers, including Republicans, saying that the FCC was wrong to even pressure ABC in the first place. So I think all of that combined put Disney in a place where it needed to figure something out quickly. The question becomes, what will Jimmy Kimmel say when he returns to air on Tuesday? Remember, he originally wanted to give an apology. Disney felt awkward and it didn't feel comfortable putting him out there so soon after the remarks. Are they going to let him have free reign when he goes to his show tomorrow? I am waiting to see.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
Preeti, if you are still with us, we do understand how emotional this entire aspect is and this entire final journey is because of the connection that Zubeen had with everybody in the state of Assam and many in the country. What would you tell our viewers, considering we are putting across these very emotional scenes? Looking at his wife, nearly inconsolable, is heart-wrenching.
Yeah, see, you have mentioned about how he went for the festival, not his festival, and where we never knew that Zubeen Garg will never come back alive after going to that festival. He, in fact, was not willing to go, as far as the reports are concerned now, because he was not very well. He said he did not want to go, but there were financial some agreements also made for which he had to go, but he never came back alive. And very strangely, his next movie that was coming up in the next month, Roy Roy Binale. The Roy Roy Binale, as we have got the information about, the climax scene was very much same as this scene. He would have gone to the sea and someone of his friends would go there to rescue him. Very strange connections. We have very strange connections are now being seen. And he had a song, Akashe Gate Lobore Mon, Hagor Tolit Hubore Mon. So in this same song, Mayabini, there are these two lines, Akashe Gate Lobore Mon. I want to take the sky and the sea in my body, and I want to go into the sea forever. So he went to the sea forever. It was like his songs, even the last moment of his life was Mayabini. Akashe Gate Lobore Mon, Hagor Tolir Hubore Mon. I want to sleep in the river, in the seabed. So that is how he went away. That is how his songs were, how he went away, and this moment of grief that you were speaking about his wife Garima Saikya Garg. She will, I don't think, like the people of Assam, this will be very easy come back to a normalcy for the people of Assam and even her. Because for her, it's a long story. It's a long story of love. It was a love story between Zubeen Garg and Garima Garg. When she was in Mumbai, she was there for studying. She was there for her education. They met and they had some connections. And that's how the love affair began. And then on a fine day, he decided he will marry Garima Saikya Garg. She belongs to Golaghat and he became the son-in-law of the place called Golaghat. They had the marriage, and of the few people that you have mentioned, and we can see them on screen, is Pavitra Margarita, right? We see him very much engaged in this, and I could not even imagine how he is controlling his emotions, because he is a minister. He cannot actually show the way the emotions can be shown by a normal human being. But he is a very, very close friend, I tell you, very close friend to Goldie. Goldie was his name, Zubeen Garg's name.
Right, Preeti, thank you so much for, in fact, mentioning all of these details for our viewers. Remember, Preeti just mentioned he wanted to live a life like the eucalyptus, like the Kanchenjunga, larger than life, and that's what Zubeen Garg was for everyone. That's the final journey of the singer, Assam's beloved heartthrob, Zubeen Garg. We take a very short break with that.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
Preeti, if you are still with us, we do understand how emotional this entire aspect is and this entire final journey is because of the connection that Zubeen had.
Viewers, a Congress member of Parliament